Afternoon, everyone. Can you have a seat? I now call to order this meeting of the Standing Finance Committee. Honourable members, in accordance with Standing Order 82, 6 and 87, this meeting of the Standing Finance Committee was convened to consider proposals for the variation of appropriation for fiscal year 2021. Honourable members, in accordance with Standing Order 45.1, the speaking time in Standing Finance Committee shall not exceed 5 minutes on each intervention. The proposals for variation decreases will be considered first, then proposals for variation increases, and thereafter the proposals for write-off of losses for fiscal year 2020. The procedure we shall adopt is as follows. 1. The head and the amount to be varied will be announced. 2. The Minister with responsibility will then be invited to explain the purpose for the variation. 3. I will then propose the question that the head be varied. 4. Members may then seek clarification from the Minister. 5. Once this is concluded, the Chairman will then put the question that the sum to be varied be approved. 6. The procedure will be repeated for each head. 7. A similar procedure will be followed for the approval of the write-off of losses. 8. The committee is being asked to note that the Minister of Finance has approved the transfer of funds in the sum of $1,275,545,177 between subheads under the same head of expenditure for fiscal year 2020, and the transfer of funds in the sum of $1,116,939,459 between subheads under the same head of expenditure for fiscal year 2021. These transfers do not require the approval of the committee. Variation. Honourable members, we shall now consider the proposal for the variation for fiscal year 2021. The proposal for decreases will be considered first, followed by the proposals for decreases. Honourable members, we shall now consider the proposal for decreases for fiscal year 2021, Head 18, Ministry of Finance, a decrease of $574,889,840. I now invite the Minister of Finance to make a brief opening statement for a maximum of 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Chairman. We did not do this in a previous year because there were no variations between heads. And in those circumstances, it is not required to come to Parliament to do a variation of appropriation bill. You can vary within a head so that if there are various items and sub-items within a head, and a head is a ministry or department, you can vary within those heads, and you do not have to come and seek parliamentary approval to do that. But once you are moving from one head to another, you have to seek parliamentary approval by way of the procedures, the Standing Finance Committee, and then a debate on a variation of appropriation bill. This year, we had to put some more funds into 3 departments, and we took them from the Ministry of Finance because at the end of the fiscal year, we were able to establish a number of savings in the Ministry of Finance head, and I will go through them. Contributions to the Caribbean Development Bank, government assistance for tuition expenses, we pay the gate expenses, funding for the Agricultural Development Bank, funding for the Mortgage Finance Company, for company that's no longer functioning, community improvement services, funding for UDCOT, and funding for ETech. All of these funds were not required during the fiscal year, so we were able to generate savings there and then send those savings to the Judiciary, the Personnel Department, and the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services for urgently needed expenditure. Okay.
Honorable members, the question is that the 2021 appropriation for Head 18, Ministry of Finance, be varied by a decrease in the sum of $574,889,840. Member for Oropouche West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I note that the member has Honourable Minister of Finance has indicated that his ministry was able to generate savings under these various headings here. However, in reviewing them, I have noted that these are not in fact savings. In several occasions, under several of these subheads, the ministry in fact did not provide sufficient funding to these heads. And as a result of that, these are not necessarily savings. I would want to go to subhead to item 04-00101, contribution to the Caribbean Development Bank, and ask the minister if he could provide some clarification as to why this money was not allocated. The note says it was not requested, but is this money a continuous debt? Is it that we'll have to pay this, Minister? Is it that we'll have to pay this for 2021 in a subsequent financial year, maybe 2022?
Madam Chairman, that contribution from the Honourable Member made absolutely no sense. The member started off by saying these are not savings, and in fact there was no allocation provided for the various items that I read out. That is totally untrue. These
I think you're misquoting me, sir. I think you're
Madam Chairman,
absolutely
I did not say anything when he spoke.
Member for Oropouche
Not a word.
West. 1 minute, please. Okay, certain behavior here is not acceptable, so we won't be shooing. Member for Oropouche West, you were allowed an intervention. You made use of your intervention. You've asked a question also, and the minister is now responding. He's entitled to, in his response, not just to the question, but to give his version, according to him, a correction of certain things that have been placed on the record. And I hope we will all respect each other in this process and allow people to answer. Minister of Finance.
Chairman, I want to repeat, I did not say a word when the member was speaking, although I wanted to. So let me just repeat. The member said these are not savings because there was no allocation made for them. That is completely wrong. There can only be transfers by definition if you are transferring from an allocation to another head. If there was nothing to transfer, a transfer could not occur. And therefore, there was an allocation for the Caribbean Development Bank, and it was not utilized during the fiscal year and was therefore available for a transfer.
Member for Oropouche West.
Thank you. Ma'am, my question was to the Honourable Minister whether this remains a debt that we will have to pay in 2022 or any future point in time.
Madam Chairman, I'm advised that we took responsibility for the obligation and we made appropriate arrangements with the Caribbean Development Bank, and therefore this expenditure was not required.
Member for Point Appeal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, line item 04011/23, Agricultural Development Bank, $25 million. Minister, the ADB plays a very important role for the country in respect of food security. This funding that was not disbursed because, according to the note here, was less than the amount allocated for the period. Could the minister expand, given the whole trust in agriculture, why our ADB did not request this $25 million, or why this $25 million was not sent to them?
Certainly. This funding is made available to the Agricultural Development Bank by the Ministry of Finance in order to give the ADB sufficient funds, sufficient capital, so they can on-lend to their customers. During that fiscal year, I don't want to speculate. It could be as a result of COVID, I cannot say, but the request made to the ADB and the request from the ADB to the Ministry of Finance for this capital injection for on-lending were lower than anticipated. These are all estimates, you see. So based on previous years' records and projections and strategic plan of the ADB, they gave us an amount that they would like us to have available to them to on-lend to their customers. But for one reason or another, their customers did not request or did not meet the criteria, or for whatever reason, the ADB did not need the funds during the fiscal year. Okay?
Member for Chaguanas East.
Madam Chair, we are on decreases. I will go on when we are on increases.
Member for Princess Town.
04-00917, Government Assistance for Tuition Expenses Fund, GATE. Can the Honourable Minister indicate that in the fiscal 2020, how many persons accessed GATE funding, seeing that there seems to be a balance that is being utilized?
The GATE fund is a rolling fund. So you have a pool of funds which is topped up and replenished from time to time. In fact, every year we inherit a balance in the GATE fund that goes forward to the next year, and then we inject funds into the GATE fund. I will get for you, I don't have those details, but I will get for you. It is the number of persons you wanted. What exactly do you want?
Have been able to access this funding?
The number of people. Certainly, I will get that for you. Okay?
Member for Princess Town. Member for Point Appeal.
Chair, Minister, just a follow-up from Princess Town on the same line item on GATE, the 80 million. Given that, to use your words, there's a savings of 80 million, would that then, would it be reflected in, let us say, your budget allocation going forward, that you feel that based on the means test and etc., that the funding that would be required will be less by $80 million rolling forward?
It's not as simple as that. Let's say we start off the year with a credit balance in the GATE fund of $100 million, and then we appropriate $500 million, so that the total funds available would be $600 million. And then it is drawn down from that. So it's based on the requests coming in from the tertiary institutions to the Ministry of Education. They have to be audited, they have to be checked, and then they make the request to finance. It comes to the minister, and the minister will approve. I do this from time to time. I would get a file where everybody has done all of the checks that they have to do, and they certify this amount is now due to all of these institutions, 100 million or whatever it is, and then we will disburse. So that what would have happened in this fiscal year is that the anticipated expenditure was less than actually occurred. But that will just continue to roll over into the next fiscal year. Okay?
Member for Orpuch West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Line item 04-00126. Can the Minister advise why it is that the amount of funding allocated is $50 million less than the amount actually disbursed?
Minister.
The money allocated to the TTMF is for the subsidy on mortgage loans that successive governments have given for many, many, many years. The way the TTMF arrangement is structured, they give loans at a rate of 2% and 5% based on the amount of the loan and other criteria. This is for housing, public housing. And it's almost impossible to predict the number of mortgages that will be finalized during a fiscal year for all sorts of reasons, dealing with processing of title. Persons may be a little slow. This is the actual applicants themselves, may be a little slow in providing all of their necessary documents, bank statements, whatever it is. So that at the beginning of the year, the Ministry of Finance will make an estimate on the level of subsidy it has to provide to the TTMF, because the actual mortgage rate is higher than that. If you go to a private bank, you would not get a mortgage for 2%. You might get it for 6% or whatever. So the government makes up the difference in the cost of that interest. So that there are a huge number of factors that come to bear on the disbursement from the Ministry of Finance to the TTMF to make up that subsidy. Completion of houses, as I said, title deeds, preparedness of the applicants, and so on. So we make an estimate, it's a best estimate, but what happened in this fiscal is that at the end of the year, the amount requested from TTMF was $50 million less than what was appropriated.
Member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam. Honorable Minister, just a follow-up with respect to the same gate issue based on the answer that you provided. Can you indicate whether in 2020, compared to the year before, there would have been a reduction in the number of institutions that are gate funded?
When you're asking in terms of the year before, you're talking 2019?
A comparison, Madam.
No, I wouldn't allow that, member for Princestown, under this exercise. Member for Oropuch West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to refer back to 04-00126, the TTMF, can the Minister confirm that this reduction in allocation has not impacted on the ability of TTMF to offer the services to others, so that no citizen who applied for a loan was deprived of this mortgage because they had not sufficient funds at TTMF?
Minister of Finance.
I think there's a little mix-up there, Madam Chairman. Firstly, this is not a reduction in allocation. It's a reduction in expenditure. There was an allocation based on the best estimate of what would be required. We in Finance continue to give TTMF money on a continuous basis as and when they request it.
Member for Oropuch West.
Can the Minister then confirm that no applicant for TTMF mortgage was denied access to funding because this amount of money was not provided, it was not disbursed to the TTMF?
Madam Chairman, I don't think the member understands. We in Finance disburse money when requested. We don't handle mortgages.
Member for Point Appeal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, line item on the Community Improvement Services Limited, $14.8 million on operational costs reduction. Minister, could you state out of $14.8 million, how much of that operational cost relates to salaries?
Well, let me first explain what the bulk of this money is. This is for a judgment. So there was an anticipation that there would be a judgment and a judgment cost to play during the fiscal by September 30th. That did not happen, and this is why this money occurred. They would have a skeleton crew in that company. It's one of these companies that was being wound up.
No
Okay.
problem.
Member for Barataria Sanwan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Minister, I just want to take you back on the line item with the TTMF. You said basically the ministry will estimate how many persons may have applied or how many houses would be built, so those persons would access the mortgages from TTMF. With this movement of this $50 million, it meant that this money wasn't given to TTMF. Can you just give us an indication of how many persons may not have been able to access these services due to the fact that you can save this $50 million, as you said?
Okay, Madam Chairman, the member for Barataria is falling into the same error as the member for Oropuch. The Ministry of Finance does not manage the TTMF. TTMF is in fact does in fact report to the Ministry of Housing. So we don't get involved in those matters. What would happen is that in the budget cycle, the budget cycle starts around April of May, and then goes into June, July, September, August, and so on. And that's when we settle the numbers. So during the budget cycle, the budget division would have made a request of the Ministry of Housing to TTMF to tell us what do you expect to request from the Ministry of Finance to subsidize the mortgages, and an allocation would have been made. So we just deal with funding a request coming from TTMF, but we don't get into all of those details that you're talking about. That is really, I can get the information for you. I'll give you that undertaking, but I'm just trying to explain that we in the Ministry of Finance do not manage TTMF.
And this figure will represent that there was a decrease in the number of mortgages basically for that fiscal year.
I can't answer that. I'm going to repeat that it is not for the Minister of Finance to give you those details off the cuff, because TTMF does not report to us. We don't have that information. But I will get it.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Member for Princestown.
Thank you, ma'am. Minister, line item 07011122, E-Tech. One of E-Tech's loans for 160 million would have matured in terms of the payment, sorry. In 2021, there was an allocation for final payment on this loan. However, the Cabinet chose to refinance the loan. Can you give us an indication of what was the purpose of refinancing as opposed to settling this 160 million?
Yes, member. When we in the Ministry of Finance look at our debt profile and our debt servicing program and the maturation of debts over the years, we adopt all sorts of strategies. In some cases, we pay off a debt when it becomes due. In some cases, we renegotiate. In some cases, we refinance. In this particular case, at the beginning of the fiscal year, the plan was to pay off the debt as it became due. But we made a decision based on evolving circumstances to refinance it. So we refinanced it by borrowing an amount from another institution, and therefore it was not necessary to make this payment during this fiscal year.
Member for Princestown.
Minister, can you indicate what was the initial reason for this 160 million loan to E-Tech?
Well, as I said, at the beginning of the year, we have a debt management strategy. So as I said, we would know what loans are maturing during the fiscal, and we would have a plan, a debt management plan, in October. And it would be a combination of things. Some debts you would refinance, some debts you would pay off. So it depends on the level of the debt at the particular time. It depends on cash flow, because in order to pay this 160 million, we would have needed to have 160 million available in cash flow. So as we came closer to the date, we decided rather than use 160 million of our cash flow, which is what you need for appropriations to all ministries, we decided instead to refinance. So it's just one of those things that happens during the year. The debt management plan at the beginning is not cast in stone. It is based on your best understanding of circumstances, but as you go along, you may make a decision to refinance rather than pay off. That happens to us every week. Every week we have to make decisions like that. Sometimes we pay them off if we have cash flow. When cash flow is tight, we refinance.
Member for Oropouche West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the same subhead 07001/22, can the Minister advise the additional cost to the taxpayer of refinancing this loan?
Not be able to give you those details. I give you an undertaking to see what is the effect of refinancing.
Member for Princestown.
I didn't get from the Honourable Minister on the last occasion. He responded to me. Basically, the question was, this loan was given to E-Tech. What specific project this loan financed? And that was the thrust really of the question.
Let me see if the public servants can answer that. Just hold on. It is believed it was for hotel development, but I'll get the exact details for you. Okay?
Member for Barataria Sanwan.
Thank you very much. Minister, with respect to the UDCOT line item, also is that loan, was it for a specific project also? The loan that was refinanced?
No. Yes, refinanced.
What project?
A number of different projects.
Okay, so it's just based on some of
It's
the...
a block loan made to UDCOT for a variety of projects.
Okay, and it is the same reason that you would have given for
Yes,
ETEC, that is
exactly.
why
We
you
look at cash
refinanced.
flow. For,
Yeah.
You know, from sometimes the overdraft is right up close to 100%, other times it's at 70%, 60%, 80%. So it just depends on the cash flow needs at that point in time. As we approach the maturation of the loan, you make a decision whether to refinance or use your funds to pay it off.
Minister, which financial institution was the loan refinanced with?
I'll get that information for you.
Thank you very much.
Member for Puchwas.
The same question as before with regards to this UDCOT loan, Madam Chair.
Speak in the mic. I'm sorry.
Sure.
With the mask and everything, it's muffled. I'm sorry.
Sure, Madam Chair. The same subhead, UDCOT. If the minister would also agree to provide the additional cost to the taxpayer for refinancing this loan.
I give an undertaking to indicate what is the effect, because you have to understand that if we use cash, we're in fact using the overdraft, which may have a higher interest rate associated with it than a loan, because the overdraft is not free. The central bank charges the government the repo rate for the overdraft. So I'll look at what the effect of refinancing is rather than get into your version of language.
Member for Puchwas.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I noticed that the alleged saving from the ministry with regards to UDCOT is 230 million, but it was a saving based on a refinancing of a UDCOT, $230.1 million. Is that a typo in the agenda item here?
I think we could have handled the point one. It's only a point one. That's only 100,000. So I'm sure that we were able to handle the 100,000 and refinance the 230.
Honorable members, the question is that the 2021 appropriation for Head 18, Ministry of Finance, be decreased by the sum of $574,889,840. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Head 18, Ministry of Finance, has been varied by a decrease in the sum of $574,889,840. Thank you, Minister of Finance. Thank you, Permanent Secretary, Controller of Accounts, and the other representatives of the Ministry of Finance. Members, we now go to increases, and it has been agreed that we will take the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services first. Head 78, Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. I'll just await the technical people coming to assist you, Minister. Yeah. Pass. Head 78, Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, an increase of $531,053,225. I will now invite the Minister of Social Development and Family Services to make a brief opening statement for a minimum of 5 minutes. Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services continues to effectively carry out its mandate of maintaining the nation's safety net, including the provision of support provided to mitigate the COVID-19 measures. Madam Chair, the supplementation and variation of appropriation for the fiscal year 2021 emanated from the additional expenditure related to COVID-19 social support grants, Phase 2, in the sum of $40 million. Additional funding was also required to meet expenses related to the 3 major grants, namely the Senior Citizens Pension, Disability Assistance Grant, and Public Assistance Grant in the sum of $548 million. The Ministry remains resolute in the delivery of a responsive and multifaceted social service system, caring for and the protection of our poor and vulnerable families from the multidimensional impacts of poverty are areas of focus as we invest in the development of the people needing it the most.
Honorable members, the question is that the 2021 appropriation for Head 78, Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, be varied by an increase in the sum of $531,053,225. Member for Chaguanas East.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Madam Chair, at this time, I would just like to seek some clarification, and based on the Minister's opening statement, under Head 78, Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, where it says -for senior citizens pension and social assistance disability grants. I had some concern with that, but based on what the Minister just said, public assistance. So therefore, I think there's an error there, since social assistance will refer to public assistance. So it's worded as one. So therefore, it's 3 grants being referred to on the actual item number 1.
Yes, sir.
All right, so I think that would need to be
Public
corrected.
assistance, disability, and senior citizens.
Right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, can the Minister indicate to the committee the proposed expenditures for listed under these 3 items: senior citizens pension, disability assistance grant, and public assistance grant, based on this increase?
$80 million, I think that was. Senior Citizens Grant, $418,315,156. Social Assistance, $13,108,970. And Disability Grant, $99,629,099, which amounted to $531 million.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I have a few questions, if you would permit me. Madam Chair, given that, bearing in mind that these services are established services of the Ministry of Social Development, why was this placed on the back burner, if I may say, in terms of effecting payments to cause it to lead to this increase, stated $531 million?
This was not placed on the back burner. This was to address a shortfall. And you would know that our grants, our applications and so on increase over time.
Madam Chair, if you would permit me, can the Minister state for us whether, based on her reports in previous SFCs, as well as the Ministry's administrative report, whether the delays in determination of matters or applications in terms of senior citizens pension, disability grants, and public assistance would have caused some of these applications to be, the delays in these applications would have caused you to have to request this increase?
No, this has nothing to do with delays in application. Actually, we have always paid our grants. These are our core grants, on time.
Madam Chair, based on the Minister's reporting, 2,000 plus persons under senior citizens pension would have been delayed in this fiscal year, at the end of this fiscal year 2021, due to the lack of investigation and approval. So I'm asking the Minister if these delays under the senior citizens, in addition to that, disability and public assistance, would have amounted to this sum of money as well.
No, this has nothing to do with money.
Question asked and answered. I believe that question was asked and answered, Member for Shogunas East, so maybe you can go on to another question if you have.
Sure. Madam Chair, in light of what the Minister just stated, I'm just seeking some clarification on whether allocations to follow would be sufficient to meet all the expenditure for these particular grants.
Well, at this time, we are now assessing our needs.
Madam Chair, could the Minister repeat? I did not hear.
We are now assessing it to determine if we would need any other increase in this fiscal.
Member for Barra-Clarice-Sanwan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Minister, with these increases that you would have disaggregated on the 3 grants, can you give us the total expenditure for 2021 for each of the grants with the additional variation?
For the senior citizens grant, total expenditure $4,236,563.433.
$4,237,000,000.
$236,563,433. Social assistance, $353,121,459. Disability, ready? $622,603,199.
Thank you.
Member for Princestown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Honourable Minister, one of the things you indicated a short while ago was that in this last financial year, you saw increases in terms of applications and persons coming on to the ministry with respect to the various grants. With respect to the senior citizen, the disability, and the other grants, would you be able to tell us this year by how much these increases were in terms of the persons who are actually registered with the ministry who are now eligible for these grants? One, and well, let's go with that first, sorry.
$8,716 senior citizens pensioners.
On the ministry's registry as of now?
Yes, as of now.
And during this last financial year that we're dealing with, out of that 108 plus thousand, how many of those were new for this financial year?
2022?
No, ma'am. With respect to the figures that we're dealing with for this.
You're saying this financial, which financial
yes, I'm speaking
year?
within the context of what we're dealing with right now, which is 2020 to 2021.
Yes, okay,
Yes.
right.
The increase in 2021?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Added. 2,876 persons.
That's senior citizens?
Yes.
Can you give us for the others, please? Can you share with us for the disability and the other grants?
Okay.
These are for this new intake.
Disability, 572 persons. For social public assistance, 757.
Princess now?
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Honorable Minister, can you indicate, in light of these increases, whether or not there was a review of the criteria for persons to come on board with respect to these new intakes?
I think on the whole, there's a review of not just to come on board, there's a review of the grants taking place at this time.
Okay, but the criteria that was utilized for these numbers that you just shared with us would have been what existed with the ministry before, or would it have been based on a review of the criteria?
I'm not hearing you clearly.
The question that I'm asking is these new intakes for this financial year of 2020 to 2021.
Yes.
Was it that these new intakes were based on an existing criteria, or was it that there was a review of the criteria for these new persons to come on?
Or these were based on the existing criteria.
And now you're sharing with us that there's a review. Okay.
Yes.
Member for Oropouche West.
Asked and answered already. Thank you.
Okay, member for Barataria San Juan.
Yeah, same asked and answered.
Member for Chaguanas East.
Madam Chair, Minister, can you state as a result of COVID-19 how many pensioners would have been removed from the system during this fiscal year being related to 2021?
We wouldn't be able to answer that because we don't deal with the cause of death. That would be from the Ministry of Health.
Okay. Honorable members, the question is that the 2021 appropriation for Head 78, Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, be increased by the sum of $531,053,225. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Head 78, Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, has been varied by an increase in the sum of $531,053,225. I thank the Minister of Social Development and Family Services and the PS in that ministry. Head 03, Judiciary.
Madam Chair, we have the technocrats from the Judiciary here.
Yeah. Just allowing social development to leave the chamber. Head 03, Judiciary, an increase of $35,195,944. Minister. I will now invite the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs to make a brief opening statement for a maximum of 5 minutes. Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'm pleased to inform that the matters before us now were signalled even at the start of last year's position. We did indicate in the context of COVID that we would have several adjustments to be made because things were, to use the phrase, in flux. With that said, Madam Speaker, whilst the judiciary did engage in viring funds well within its permit to do so, in bringing these matters to a close, we're able to, of course, now state the subject heads that we have dealt with. With respect to the variation of appropriation, 22,622,000 odd stands in respect of the concept of security. We had insufficient funds, as we indicated in that flux statement at the beginning of the appropriation bill for that cycle, to pay for contract salaries and licensing committees in fiscal 2021. What we did is we used funds in the security vote to address this shortfall, and our shortfall we are therefore now treating with in that security vote. Of course, this is across a number of buildings across Trinidad and Tobago. There are approximately 39 buildings that we're treating with, 22 in Trinidad and 17 in Tobago. We are also dealing with a separate item, and that is the provision of funding in respect of the line item for telephones. As you know, during the COVID pandemic, our telephony and ISP arrangements are critical in the virtual environment that we functioned very successfully in. And I think the judiciary is to be openly complimented for having withstood in an environment of a pandemic in the manner that it did. That tag item is approximately $6 million. We had rental accommodation and storage. Again, we had flagged early that we would need to treat with insufficiency of funds to meet rental accommodation for courts. We have, for the 39 buildings, 22 in Trinidad and 17 in Tobago, we had to treat with a shortfall of approximately 7.592. By the time we made certain adjustments, we got that figure down to 6.5 million. The transfers, of course, are standard. We had transfers moving from areas of surplus into areas of savings. Those were to the tune of $2.6 million. And the reasons for transfers are quite innocuous. We were dealing with the gratuity to certain persons. There were 93 persons, and the gratuity calculations were not yet in order. And we also had some savings in respect of the preparation for payments on a loan facility for UDICOT as we were arranging our affairs in the move to the waterfront courts, which in fact we have already partially occupied. I have taken the liberty, Madam Chair, to address a number of issues which I expect to come by way of questions if members have, hoping to have satisfied them beforehand rather than in the course of questioning. I make myself open with the assistance of the judiciary team here to answer any questions that members may have.
Honourable members, the question is that the 2021 appropriation for Head 03, Judiciary, be varied by an increase in the sum of $35,195,944. Member for Barataria Sanwa.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. AG, you mentioned some transfers in terms of gratuity. Can you just give us the figure for the gratuity payment? Is it 92 officers you mentioned?
Yes, please. It's 93 persons. 93. And the amount is 5.684259. We had received an allocation of 4.588100. So the shortfall was 1,096,159. That's the spread of persons and specific numbers.
So that head is only really varied by 1.9.
Yes.
1.96. With respect to the telephone services, I saw that on the revised estimate there was an allocation of $7 million for Trinidad and $150,000 in Tobago. AG, can you just give us an indication whether this telephone bill also includes the internet and other services that the judiciary took onto board with respect to the establishments of the virtual courts?
Yes, it does. It includes the suite of services.
Okay. And with respect to the line item, with respect to rent in the sum of $6.5 million, which court is that or administrative building that the judiciary will now be occupying? Is it a new building they occupied or is it existing arrears?
So,
referring to something, member for Barataria Sanwan, that I'm not sure what is the source in that, what is before us and not the transfers within the head. Okay, so this detail that you're referring to, I'm not sure what is the document. Yes.
Can I, Madam Chair? While the AG was given his opening statement, he disaggregated where the 35 million was, and he said that 6.5 of that would have been allocated to rent. So I'm asking in that context.
Okay. Yes.
Madam Chair, I was going to say that I was the cause of that questioning because I did address the issue. I thank the member for the question. Honourable Member, the total pool of buildings is 39 buildings. There are 22 in Trinidad and 17 in Tobago. The shortfall for all of the 22 buildings in Trinidad was 6.8 million roughly, and the total shortfall for the 17 buildings in Tobago was approximately $782,000. So what happened was that there was a shortfall across all of the buildings because the total sum aggregated was insufficient. We knew it would have been insufficient. The Honourable Minister of Finance indicated that upfront. So the total shortfall that we're looking at is spread across rental due for all buildings, and therefore it's to be applied across all 39 of the buildings.
Okay. All right. And it's a res, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. That's all from me.
Nothing else? Honourable members, the question is that the 2021 appropriation for Head 03, Judiciary, be increased by the sum of $35,195,944. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Head 03, Judiciary, has been varied by an increase in the sum of $35,195,944. I thank you, Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs. I thank you, the Deputy Court Executive Administrator and the Director of Finance. Head 17, Personnel Department.
It's a dual responsibility.
I invite the Minister of Public Administration to make a brief opening statement for a maximum of 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, the Personnel Department is responsible for terms and negotiating and agreeing on terms and conditions for the public service. The budget that was presented to the Ministry of Finance was contemplated in terms of the plans that they had for the financial year 2021. The allocation finally agreed in the budget fell short of that, and so the variation that is being for which approval is being requested is to address that shortfall. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Chair.
Honourable members, the question is that the 2021 appropriation for Head 17, Personnel Department, be varied by an increase in the sum of $8,640,700 $671. Member for Barataria Salmon.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Minister, will you be so kind enough to give us a breakdown of the separate expenditures? Because I see under the explanation there's rental, there's renewal of software, janitorial, consultancy services. Can you just disaggregate that $8.6 million into those categories?
Sure. There was an adjustment in respect of rental of accommodation, an adjustment in respect of other contracted services, which largely had to do with a payment for a review of the government health plan. There was an adjustment in respect of a license fee that was payable. In respect of the PSIP program, there were adjustments in respect of job evaluations being conducted for the public service on the one hand, and on the other, the SRC.
And Minister, can you give us the cost of each of those that you outlined?
Madam
So-
Chairman, oh, sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, just let me add some clarification. The CPO, in fact, has a dual reporting relationship. The Personnel Department resides within the Ministry of Public Administration, but with respect to collective bargaining in terms of terms and conditions of employment of public servants, the PPO reports in Ministry of Finance. The CPO is currently doing quite a lot of work for the Ministry of Finance, a job evaluation exercise, and also looking at the health plan for the public servants. So even though the allocation is within public admin and the line minister is the Minister of Public Admin, there is that other relationship with the Ministry of Finance. And one of the reasons for the supplementation was for the cost of this job evaluation exercise, where we had expected to have to supplement the appropriation in the amount of about $8 million for the year, but we ended up spending a little less. Okay, so I just wanted to give that clarification.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
Minister, I believe there's a question.
Yes, Madam Chair. So the adjustments that were made were in respect of rent to start with. The allocation that was requested by the CPO in respect of rent was $7.6 million. The allocation that was received was $7 million, so there was an under allocation of $600,000. But because the overall allocation included an understatement, an under allocation in respect of salaries and wages, there was a transfer during the course of the year from rental accommodation and other expenses to compensate, to ensure that we paid public servants on time, both contract workers and government workers on the establishment, so that at the end of the year, there was a shortfall that was in excess of the original $600,000 shortfall, and that amounted to $2.192,433. $2,192,433. Yes? In respect of fees, and these are fees for the license, that was $67,800. Other contracted services was $1,340,538. Janitorial services, $85,988 under recurrent expenditure. In respect of the PSIP, the job evaluation for the civil service, $4,953,912, and that's it.
And the SRC?
Sorry?
You said that there were two PSIP, one for public and one for SRC.
The SRC, there was no payment in the end because the services were not provided in accordance with the terms of the contract, so the payment was deferred to a later year when those services were delivered.
Sure. And Minister, can you give us what the total expenditure for rent, lease, office accommodation would have been for 2021 with this variation?
Can you repeat the question,
Can you
please?
give us what the total expenditure for rent, lease, accommodation would have been for the year 2021 with this variation?
The total amount requested for rental or lease of accommodation was $8,625,348.
Okay.
No further questions? Honorable members, the question is that the 2021 appropriation for Head 17, Personnel Department, be increased by the sum of $8,640,671. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. So, on this? Okay, so, members, a division has been called for so that we will ask that we have the members who are throughout the building to get here. We will wait for 3 minutes. As before, we know that if a member's turn has been passed, if the member finds himself or herself in the chamber before the vote is announced, the member will be allowed to vote. So the 3 minutes starts now. Ready? Are you ready? Okay, so members, the vote will commence now. And members are reminded that any member who missed their turn, once they've come into the chamber before the vote is announced, they will be allowed to vote. Please, Lord.
Mr. Imbert,
Yes.
Mr. Alwari,
I wish to declare an interest and say yes.
Mrs. Robinson Regis,
Aye.
Ms. Beckles,
Aye.
Mr. Hines,
Aye.
Mr. D. Alsting, Mrs. Webster Roy,
Aye.
Ms. Kudrow,
Aye.
Dr. Gatsby Dolly,
Aye.
Mr. Ford,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings, Mr. Richards, Mr. Manning, Mrs. Morris Julian, Mr. Dino Brigger, Mr. Scotland, Mr. Monroe, Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Ms. Amin,
Yes.
Mr. Ratiram,
Yes.
Dr. Munilal,
Yes.
Ms. Mohit,
Yes.
Mr. Indar Singh,
Yes.
Dr. Sicharan,
Yes.
Mr. Hussain,
Yes.
Mr. Hussain, Mr. Padarat,
Yes.
Mr. Ram,
No interest, yes.
Mr. Tanku,
Yes.
Dr. Rapper,
Members, order, please. On a division, with 31 members voting for, with no member voting against, and with no abstentions. Head 17, Personnel Department has been varied by an increase in the sum of $8,640,671. I thank the Minister of Public Administration and her team. We shall now proceed to the consideration on the proposals for write-offs of losses. Head 02, Auditor General, in the sum of $1,498,661.01. Head 26, Ministry of Education, in the sum of $1,330,656.74. Head 48, Ministry of Trade and Industry, in the sum of $5,389,331.66. I will now invite the Minister of Finance to make a brief opening statement for a maximum of 5 minutes. Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. The write-offs are quite routine and quite standard. The write-off in the Auditor General's Department is for audit fees for previous years going way back to 1991 and 1993, and for audit fees for the THA from 2001 and 2009. These departments, Eric Williams, Complex Authority, and the THA are all funded by government, and therefore, even though the fees exist, we are asking for them to be written off because there's no point in them remaining on the books. Similarly, education, a situation arose where some teachers, 178 teachers, were overpaid as a result of implementation of a classification and compensation plan for the teaching service, again going way, way back to 1998 and 2002. It was felt it was not fair to penalize these teachers by asking them to repay the money, so we're asking for that to be written off. It's 20 years old. And in the Ministry of Trade and Industry, again, ETEC is owed money by InvestTT. Both of these entities are fully funded by the state. InvestTT in particular is fully reliant on government subvention, has no revenue stream to fund its operations. So that even though there is a debt on the books, ETEC's books that is, from InvestTT, there's no point really in addressing this matter by way of a subvention to InvestTT, and this goes back to the years 2014 to 2017. So we're asking for these three sums to be written off.
Honorable members, the question is that the write-off of losses for Head 02, Auditor General, in the sum of $1,498,666.01. Head 26, Ministry of Education, in the sum of $1,330,656.74. Head 48, Ministry of Trade and Industry, in the sum of $5,389,331.66 be approved. Member for Oropouche West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a point of clarification, I note that in the script, the note to the Standing Finance Committee, that at the start of it, the Minister advised that the committee was not convened in 2021 to consider these very same accounts. Can the Minister advise why the committee was not convened in in January 2021, so that we have to do this today?
I think I referred to that earlier. There was no requirement to have a variation of appropriation in 2021, and therefore no opportunity to deal with write-offs. So they're carried forward to this year, and we're dealing with them now.
Honorable members, the question is that the write-off of losses for Head 02, Auditor General, in the sum of $1,498,666.01. Head 26, Ministry of Education, in the sum of Head 26, Ministry of Education, in the sum of $1,330,656.74. Head 48, Ministry of Trade and Industry, in the sum of $5,389,331.66 be approved. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. The write-off of losses head 02, 26, and 48 in the sum of $8,218,653.91 is approved. Honorable members, please note that the debate for the adoption of the committee's report will take place on Monday, January 24th, 2022 at 1:30 p.m. This meeting of the Standing Finance Committee is now adjourned. I thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon.